Son of God discloses, and he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own. For the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. He speaks in the sound of his voice, is so sweet the birds hush their singing, and the melody that he gave to me within my heart is ringing. And he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own. And the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known.
Christ has promised, I will not leave you comfortless. I will come to you. I am the resurrection and the life, says the Lord. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Now we have come together today within the strengthening fellowship of friends and family to celebrate the life of Robert, Ernest, Charles, William, Bob, Wicks, to share our memory and our grief with one another, and to reaffirm our faith in God's unfailing goodness, to hear again God's promise of resurrection, and to commend Bob to God's everlasting care. For today we gather together to share our grief and our tears, but also to share some smiles and chuckles as we remember and celebrate Bob's abundant life, so blessed with family and friends. Yet no matter how much time we took today, a spirit such as his cannot be captured or condensed. Therefore, in this service, we'll share some thoughts and some memories as we remember and celebrate Bob. Now, unfortunately, in these strange times in which we are living at present, all who would like to be here today cannot be here in person, but are able to join us virtually. So thank you for joining us, whether it is by watching the recording of the service or whether it is by joining us live. The family feels the warmth of your love as they begin the grieving process. So now let us begin our celebration of Bob's life by going to the source of all life in prayer. Let us pray. Gracious God, your steadfast love endures forever, your faithfulness to all generations. Trustworthy in all your words and gracious in your deeds, minister to us now in our grief. Speak to our hearts your words of comfort. Touch us into hope through the promises of Holy Scripture, and enfold us within the fellowship of all who share our sorrow. Fill us with the joy and peace that comes from above. In quietness and peace, we wait upon you. Amen. Now today I would like to share with you a passage from Matthew's Gospel. Everyone then who hears these words of mine and acts on them will be like a wise man who built his house on rock. The rain fell, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall, because it had been founded on rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. Now I picked this passage today because after speaking to Heather and Alan and hearing the stories they shared, the center of those stories was their father, their rock. Bob, who was the rock for Mary Jane, especially in these last few years. Bob, who was the rock for Heather and Teresa and Alan throughout their childhood, indeed throughout their lives. And of course the rock for his dear grandchildren. For Bob was not only a man who built his life, his career, and his family on a rock-solid foundation, but he was the rock at the center of it all. And because of this, Bob built all the important relationships in his life with compassion, with commitment, and with courage. For this passage speaks of solid things, of rock, weathered, battered, but ultimately enduring. Now, this life of steadfastness and duty began when he was born the only child of Nora Jones. He and his mother were very close, as is often the case with only children. But despite having no siblings, Bob was blessed to have cousins in this area. And of course, his life was blessed with further love when he met Mary Jane. Now, Mary Jane and Bob lived close together. They went to East Elgin as well together, but there was only 1 year that they were there at the same time. While he was attending grade 13, and she was a newbie in grade 9. But that was enough. And in 1954, they were married. And were lucky to spend 66, almost 67 years together. Now, in those first years or so, Bob and Mary Jane lived with his mother, Nora. But tragically, she died when shortly after, when Bob was only about 23 years old, she was the single fatality in the Elmer area due to Hurricane Hazel. But life had to go on for this young man and this young father. For Bob and Mary Jane were blessed with the births of Heather, Teresa, and Alan. When they first got married, Bob started his career with the Bank of Montreal. But, as he would later remember, that was on the lowest rung on the ladder. But of course, his work ethic and his reliability earned him the respect of his employers. And eventually, he worked his way up through the ranks until he was in the corporate lending area, and then, of course, retired after 45 successful years. Unfortunately, this trajectory had mixed blessings, though, for the family. For every few years, they would have to move. As Heather and Alan remember, they were dragged around southwestern Ontario several times. Here now to share some thoughts is Alan.
I think I'm allowed to take this up. I think the under-over on the amount of times I'm going to break down was 3 when I came in. I think Vegas just moved that up to 5, so please bear with me. We want to thank everyone for coming today to celebrate our dad's life. Not only those that are here in person, but those that are here virtually as well. We also know that there are those that are unable to be here today, and we know that Dad is in our thoughts and prayers. I know Dad is looking down on us now, and I truly believe he knows that he was loved. Dad's passing was very unexpected for us and very quick. Other than a bad back, Dad had never been sick a day in his life. This pandemic has impacted us in so many different ways. We only saw and I think some people may have seen the picture over there, we only saw my parents through the condo window for the last year. It was very difficult because of the COVID restrictions. It was only in January when we started to get the idea that Dad wasn't well. He said, I have a bit of a cold, Alan, or he told Teresa, I might have a bit of the flu. We contacted his doctor. His doctor sent over some antibiotics. He tried those for about a week, but it didn't get much better. I went over to the condo on Saturday, and Mom said, he's not doing well. He hasn't got out of bed. I went into the bedroom. He had problems breathing. I phoned an ambulance. He went to the hospital. A couple of days later, we got the very bad news that he had lung cancer and it had spread. And unfortunately, Dad passed a couple of days later. To say that we are still in shock at the speed of how things happened would be an immense understatement. But that was Dad. He never wanted to be in the spotlight. He never wanted anyone to worry about him. He preferred about being in the background, giving a helping hand to everybody who needed it. Dad always felt that he needed to take care of everyone, but never wanted anyone to help him. It was only the last month or so where we truly got to help Dad. The best way to describe Dad when we were young was he was hard-nosed, hard-working, frugal. But as Dad grew older, had grandchildren, and started taking more care of you, Mom, the gentler, more caring side came out in Dad, and truly was appreciated by everybody. Unfortunately, as Janet mentioned, one of the things that shaped Dad's life forever was the unfortunate passing of his mom in a tragic car accident because of Hurricane Hazel when he was in his early 20s. Because of that, Dad never wanted us to drive in bad weather. It was ironic this morning, I was talking to Stefan, it was freezing rain when he left. It was freezing rain when I got up this morning. I could hear Dad saying, "You're not going to my funeral. You're not going to my funeral." One other thing, he always wanted to make sure our cars were working. He knew nothing about cars. As a matter of fact, when I was taking him groceries this year during the pandemic, he came out with his little cart and he said, "Alan, you need new tires." And I said, "Dad, they are new tires." And he just went on his way. Dad loved sports growing up, everyone knows that. He loved to play every sport. He tells us now, and I think Denise and I confirmed it, we went to East Elgin High School, for those of you, Harvey or whoever went there. He says there's trophies of him all over there. I think that may be a slight exaggeration, but he was certainly a very good athlete growing up, and he loved playing baseball growing up, and he coached me when I was young. Another sport that Dad loved was golf. Unfortunately, in his later years, his back was really quite bad, and he couldn't golf. But I remember coming to visit Grandpa Quick and Grandma Quick, and even Grandma and Grandpa West from out in St. Thomas, and Dad would take us to Pleasant Valley, and I don't know how many people remember the old Pleasant Valley golf course, because it was 50 years ago. We were actually there. But Dad had this incredible knack. Number one was way up high. It was a par 4, and he would almost hit the green every time, and I was so impressed with that, because I would usually duff mine into the side of the hill or slice it over on number 2. But I was truly impressed with Dad's golfing ability, even though Harvey was probably a little bit better, and Mark was even better. A hockey dad. Dad was the best hockey dad. Janet talked about how we moved all across Canada. Dad would take me to hockey games and hockey practice, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., snowy weather, all types of weather. I think that's where I learned my work ethic from. His 2 favorite phrases to me was, "Don't beat yourself," and "keep your emotions under control." Not sure I did a good job with either of those. I was texting with my friend, just the other day, and for those who don't know it, Walter Gretzky passed away the other day. And my friend said, both good hockey dads are up in heaven now. And I said, I joked my dad would be saying to Walter Gretzky, "My son was okay at hockey." And Walter would respond, "My son was okay too." Dad had some great qualities, but he had some limitations as well. Dad was not mechanically inclined, for anybody who knew him. Right, Mom? If something was broken in our house, either we had to bring someone in to fix it, or it stayed broke. I remember once we took a trip down to Florida with Aunt Betty and Uncle Ed and Ted and Linda. They had a fancy trailer, right? You guys had the completely covered one. Dad rented for like $6.99 at some place. A wind-up one, and it never wound up properly, or it never wound down properly, and he never did get the hang of that. It was one of the greatest trips we ever took, but that thing winding up and winding down was a bit of a problem. Another area that Dad had a bit of a problem with was technology, as some older people do. Denise and I bought them an iPad and a digital frame. We have no idea where that is now, right? No idea. I looked for it the other day. The other thing, unfortunately, Mom broke her arm last summer, and we had to go to the hospital several times to get some x-rays done. So I would drive them to the hospital, I'd get a wheelchair, we'd wheel Mom in, and I'd show Dad, this is how you use the cell phone. Phone me when you are done, and I will come pick you up. So the first time, the phone rang, and I go, great, my dad actually knows how to use a cell phone. I go, "Hi, Dad. Hi, Dad. Hi, Dad." And all I hear on the other end is muttering, "This damn thing doesn't work. This damn thing doesn't work. How does this damn thing work?" And then I got a call from the hospital a couple minutes later saying, "Can you come pick up your mom and dad?" So that's what we did from that point on. The other thing, and I think I mentioned this to the Jones clan over there, my dad did love Alvin Jones too. And unfortunately, Alvin passed away last August. And my dad never had a printer. He has a computer. I don't think he ever opened it. But in one of his drawers, I saw a printed obituary of Alvin Jones. And that certainly touched me, because I have no idea how he got that printed, because he didn't have a printer. He must have gone down to the condo office to get that done. So that's very touching, and we'll certainly keep that in a special place. Dad always worried about all of us, but Teresa, I think he especially worried about you the most. I think it gave him great peace. Well, we could tell stories, but we won't. I saved you here. When Stephen came into your life a few years ago, and not only did he come into your life, but you had a great wedding a couple years ago. That gave him such peace of mind, and Stephen, we're so happy to have you as part of the family. What part of me? Oh, it's your name. But for Teresa, it was quite the role reversal the last month or so. Teresa phoned me in January and said, should I take some food over to Mom and Dad? I don't think they'll accept. I said, try it. So she phoned, and Dad accepted. Other than me taking them groceries during the first part of the pandemic, that was the first time Dad had ever accepted anything, I think, in his entire life. That certainly gave us an indication how he was feeling. I believe those visits that you and Stephen made really helped Mom and Dad. And I think also for you, Teresa, it was quite a role reversal, as Dad had taken care of you most of your life, and in the end, you took care of him, and it was very much appreciated. Dad liked to teach. I'll bring it up a little bit better now, Teresa, in terms of Dad wanted to teach Mom and Teresa how to drive in Montreal. The first driving lesson that Dad took with Teresa, she came pulling in the driveway, hit the accelerator instead of the brake, and went through the hedge. Needless to say, Dad was on the phone to Young Drivers of Canada, or whatever it was. So both Mom and Teresa got their driver's license, and our hedge was saved. Heather was the first child, and I think things were a little tougher for you, Heather, in terms of Mom and Dad were just trying to figure out how to be parents. Heather often says that her personality is similar to Dad's. I was never sure exactly what she meant by that, but Heather was a psych nurse, so I guess she knows what she's talking about. But Mom and Dad were both so proud of Heather. She became a nurse and started practicing nursing at the hospital in St. Thomas. Heather also got some of Dad's athletic abilities, and I remember one specific time in Montreal we were watching through the back window. For those of you that have played ball with Heather, maybe Nancy did or someone did, she could throw the ball like Nolan Ryan. And in the backyard, Heather was throwing this hard ball at this poor guy that Teresa remembers the name of, but I don't. And after he missed two that went by his head at about 95 miles an hour, Dad just rushed out and took the glove from him and said, that's it. We don't want to have a severe injury. Heather also said Dad did not show emotion very much. One of the few times that she said she saw Dad cry due to sadness is when she left home in Montreal for the first time. We hated to tell Heather that it actually wasn't tears of sadness, it was tears of joy. We all had our own bedrooms, so we were happy at that point in time. My parents loved Ellen and Harvey Jones. We relished the time we spent with the Jones family, and Mom and Dad loved it so much too. It was so great to see how Mom and Dad would come out of their shell. Now, granted, there was a little alcohol involved in most of those things. And there was a lot of card playing, but they had such a great time. Mom and Dad and Harvey and Helen, they went to Egypt, they went to Europe, they went on cruises, and Dad always loved going to Tilsonburg Golf Course to play golf. Both my parents, but especially my mom, was really hit hard when Helen passed away a few years ago. And she, to this day, tells me a part of her died the day that Aunt Helen passed away. I know my dad loved my wife, and he says, well, I've been married to her for almost 30 years. I gotta do better. Dad's telling me, suck it up, get it going. Don't let your emotions control you. But not only did they love Denise, they loved her parents as well, Maria and Al. Often the four parents would go out without us to have dinner. We spent one very memorable vacation that Denise says was the best vacation ever. It was our two kids, my mom and dad, her mom and dad. We went down to South Carolina. One of the best vacations ever. Although Al, her dad, and my dad's personality were complete opposites of the spectrum, they got along very well and went lawn bowling all the time. I can hear her dad in heaven now going, "Come on, Bob, let's put our whites on and go lawn bowling." Although my dad changed over the last 70 years, one thing that did not change was his love for his wife. They married when he was quite young, and they spent many years taking their family across Canada, raising us very well. When Dad retired about 25 years ago, they moved into the condo where they still are now. Dad loved his recliner, and Mom sitting right beside him on the edge of the couch. You could often see them watching curling or tennis or the news. I would stop by about once a week, and we'd sit and watch the 6 o'clock news together. However, over the last 10 years, things started to change. Mom started to have some health problems, and Dad started taking much more care of Mom and having the caregiver role. There are notes in the condo everywhere, especially beside the oven, on how to make things. Mom, because I'm sure I could see you a few years ago telling Bob, "This is how we make chicken, Bob. This is how we do this, Bob." And he wrote it down on all his little notes, and they're all posted there. Because Dad was not just a husband now, Mom. He was really your sole caregiver. That didn't stop Dad from going out a little bit, though, too. As I told Mark, he loved to go shopping because he loved a bargain, right? Even in his wallet today, I found some coupons for local grocery stores. That part would never change. And the thing, Mom, when I go into the condo, when I turn on lights, what do? You get up and you follow me around and you turn the lights off. And that was from Dad as well. Dad did such a tremendous job for you, Mom, over the years, and how he managed over the past year during the pandemic and his failing health is just a testimony of his fortitude and his undying love for you. I know our Mom is heartbroken now that her beloved Bob is gone. As you imagine, Mom, you feel completely lost without him by your side, as he has been for the last 70 years. Please know, Mom, that all Dad wanted to know at the end was that you would be well taken care of and that he loved you very much. Dad, you have earned a well-deserved rest after all your hard work over the last number of years. You are a great man. We all love you. Rest in peace.
Yes, thank you, Alan. That was beautiful. Thank you. Bob was definitely blessed by the family he and Mary Jane built together. And then, as we heard, as he was tired to enjoy the golden years together, well, the health declined. So those years did not end up as they planned. But nonetheless, even as their health began to decline, creating some challenges, Bob and Mary Jane were blessed with more love. And that is, of course, from their 4 grandchildren. Bob enjoyed going to support his grandkids in hockey or any of their endeavors. Always happy to spend time with them. Sadly, of course, due to COVID, he was not able to see his great-grandson, Grayson. But now to share some thoughts on behalf of the other grandchildren, as well as sharing a poem with us, is Bob's granddaughter, Catherine.
Hi, my name is Catherine and I'm Bob's granddaughter. I'd like to thank everyone for coming today and those who are joining us virtually who couldn't be here today. I'd like to start off with a poem. The smile on your face is a lasting memory in our hearts. Nothing in this world, not even life or death, can keep us apart. You have always been the one we went to for advice whenever we were just upset or even just a bit uptight. You always seem to know the right things to do and say, but don't worry, You're still the one we go to. We'll be together again one day. We want to say thank you for being the best that you could be. You're our confidant, our best friend, and the head of our family. Now it's time that you can finally stop worrying about us. You can relax, have fun. You no longer need to fuss. We know that if we need you, you're right here by our side. We do believe that even though you're not here with us, this will never be goodbye. We love you, and the happiness that you have given us will last a lifetime. A few days ago, while I was at my grandma's house, the pharmacy called to say that Grandma's prescription was ready. And when my mom explained to them that Grandpa had passed, the lady on the phone expressed her deepest condolences and went on and on about how great of a man my grandpa was. He had that effect on everybody. Today, I will be speaking on behalf of Grandpa's grandchildren and telling you about my grandpa through their eyes. Unfortunately, my brother, his fiancée Marissa, and 2-year-old son Grayson couldn't make it today because they live in Alberta, but this is what my brother had to say about Grandpa. Over the last week, I have done a lot of thinking back at the memories that Grandpa and I shared over the years, and I realized that there wasn't one point where I saw him mad. Not even when I broke his brand new Big Bertha driver at the driving range. He got the shaft fixed and then he gave it to me. Or when he had to pick up 100 golf balls from the machine when he forgot to put the bucket underneath it. He was always there for our family with a great big smile, a fist bump, and normally a $20 bill. I will really miss our 30-second phone conversations. He was the kindest man, and I consider myself lucky to have looked up to him for so many years. He had, and still has, such a positive impact on my life. He will truly be missed, but will never be forgotten. My cousin Matthew wanted to say thank you, Grandpa, for coming to every hockey game and cheering for me. Thank you for telling me I played great and hard, even if I had a bad game. Thank you for fist bumping me each and every time we saw each other. You'd always comment on how I was growing like a bad weed. Thank you for hollering with me when I played golf with you out back at the condo, and when I chipped in a shot from behind a bush and we scared off that bird. Thank you for having a good spirit every time we had a conversation, bringing optimism in everything you said. Thank you, Grandpa. My cousin Nathan wanted to say, Grandpa, I remember the good times we had, swimming with you in the pool at the condo, celebrating our birthdays together, and all the special family times we shared. I will miss your smiling face and gentle kindness. You will always be in my heart and in my memories forever. Love, Nathan. When I was younger, I would always look forward to the end of summer because it meant I got to spend a week at my grandma and grandpa's house. I always had so much fun with them. Every day was a new adventure, whether it be bowling, mini putting, or even going to Niagara Falls for the day. I remember Grandpa sifting through the newspaper and giving me the page with all the movies that were playing so I could pick one for us to go and see. Grandpa would always keep the page of the newspaper with the crossword puzzles on it. I remember being so impressed with how he would always finish the crossword puzzles with the help of his dictionary that he always had sitting beside his chair. I had always admired Grandpa and his ability to be so great at everything he did. There is no one in this world that I respect and look up to more than my grandpa. The only difference now that he is gone is that when I look up to him, I will be looking up to heaven, and I know he will always be looking down on me. I love you, Grandpa.
Thank you, Catherine. Yes, Bob lived a blessed life, for sure. And as we heard, it was only until a month ago these blessings seemed to extend to good health as well. But of course, in these strange times we are living in, we cannot take anything for granted. He seemed to be okay as he and Mary Jane continued in their condo during the isolation. And as the kids were not able to be physically present in the condo, they did not realize the extent to which their father was hiding his declining health. Yes, this man who was always the first to do everything for anyone else was never good at letting anyone help him. But eventually, even he had to accept help, whether it was Teresa doing errands or whether it was Alan insisting he go to the hospital. Eventually, Bob accepted the help all his children were so happy to provide. But unfortunately, by the time Bob's cancer was diagnosed, there was nothing that could be done. And within 10 days, he died peacefully, with Heather and Alan there, and of course, Teresa staying with Mary Jane at home. For Bob has now been gathered to his Lord, that place prepared for him, a place where there is no illness, no suffering, and no grieving. A place where he will know the presence of God united with his dear mother and with all those who have gone before. That place where all can find peace and comfort in the eternal glow of God's grace. For Bob is in a place of love, and it is you, not he, who bears the burden of grief. You must heal your brokenness and must continue to live. But that is difficult, and at times such as these, we need reminders to not let death defeat us. You who are here today share in that sense of loss, that sense of pain, that sense of being somehow less by the loss of his smiles, his guidance, and most of all, his love. These are all natural emotions when faced with such a loss. But to start to heal those wounds, it's important to realize that though you may now feel somewhat less by Bob's loss, you are in fact so much greater for having had his generosity, his steadfast support, and his love in your lives. And as you live your lives, you will hear echoes of his spirit in the most unexpected places. Perhaps as you find yourself driving across town because you have a coupon. Or perhaps as you cheer on the next generation in their pursuits. Or perhaps as you simply build your relationships on a rock-solid foundation of respect, of faithfulness, and love. For Bob's love is still with us. Such a love and such a spirit of joy can never be defeated by death. So for such a legacy, for such a life lived in joy and love, let us bow together and give thanks to that gracious, loving God for sharing Bob with us. Let us pray. Dear God of grace and glory, we gather together to remember your servant, Bob Wicks. We thank you for giving him to us as husband, as father, as grandfather, as friend, to know and to love as a companion on this earthly journey. For our lives have been enriched by his, our world made brighter by his presence. But now with his loss, our lives feel emptier, our world seems darker. As we gather today and as we continue to meet in the days ahead, let us find solace in our fellowship. Comfort we who mourn. Console us in your boundless compassion, that today together we may begin the grieving process. Let us feel no shame and tears, nor guilt and laughter as we reminisce and remember. And open our hearts to one another, so that the bonds of friendship, of love that tied us to Bob will now be strengthened and unite us all. And so now let us unite our voices in that love as we repeat together the prayer you taught us, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. My friends, please stand as you're able. Take courage. Go in the knowledge that the loving God is your eternal friend and